I think I'm having trouble with mine too. I hope this one holds. Are you ready?
I'm on. You are on.
Okay, good. So as we were saying, the ultimate refuge is having the direct perception of emptiness, so you know how things are really existing and you know who you really are. So one way to express that in a nutshell is that you are your only refuge. The police aren't a refuge, pills aren't a refuge, other people aren't a refuge. You are your only refuge. If that's the case, then we can use that idea as the path. We can take the goal as the path, recognizing that we have the potential to be a Buddha and start acting like Buddhas. They say Buddhas are in bliss all the time. And so try being happy. Or, as Lama Rinpoche would say, just try being content with what you have, not desiring other things, and not wishing things could be different. Everything can be a lesson, as we talked about last time with the angry person. Not easy to do this, and you have to do it little by little, but if you make an effort, you will change and your life will seem better. Besides this, as we said, understanding the truth of where things are coming from, gaining wisdom, you need to also work towards gaining compassion towards others, because they, like us, just want to be happy and avoid pain. We're all very similar, all beings, all going after the same goal. Either trying to be happy or trying to help others be happy, if the others are Buddhas around us. So one contemplation that one could do that goes along with this idea is what Lama Rinpoche called the couch potato contemplation. And truly, I didn't understand how to do this for a long time until I figured out that you take the goal as the path. He always said, picture what it would be like to be a Buddha. And he talked about looking like Angelina Jolie or Brad Pitt. And somehow that didn't resonate with me. But when I think about what a Buddha does, has compassion for all people, see all people as equal, trying to help them, I understand that you contemplate that, you think about what would that be like? How would I be if I were like that? And I think that's the couch potato contemplation, whether you look like Angelina Jolie or Brad Pitt or not. So we're trying to finish up class 3 from course 16. We're at homework 6. Describe the taking of refuge, which is shared with practitioners of a lesser scope. So that would be what's referred to as the Hinayana or lower scope, and you have that chart I gave you, and under the column, vehicle lower way. So now we're going to talk a little bit about that, what that practitioner looks for. So first they would have to have some fear that their behavior will cause something deleterious for them. And usually they recognize it mostly in the idea of a future birth according to the Eastern traditions. So that's what we call this the first scope on the Lam Rim, on the steps of the path, is you recognize that something you do in this life could bring you a bad rebirth, a very negative thing in the next life. And you try to find some way out of that. So that's what the refuge is you're looking for. And you believe that the 3 jewels can protect you from this. by working with the idea of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you can keep yourself from a bad rebirth. And by the way, I forgot to mention when I had the paths up here, they say that in the path of accumulation and then preparation, they say at some point on the path of preparation, as you're studying emptiness very deeply, you guarantee yourself that you're never going to take a lower rebirth again. So that's pretty exciting. But I also forgot to mention that really getting renunciation and bodhicitta is very hard too. That even while we're getting deeper and deeper into the path of accumulation, we're doing both of those at the same time, accumulation and preparation. But they do say that at some point, even without the direct perception of emptiness, you protect yourself from a lower rebirth on the path of preparation with emptiness. See, emptiness is your refuge, even for this level. In this particular homework question, they do talk about result refuge. It's defined as hoping that one or more of the three jewels, as they will be achieved in yourself, will render you assistance. I talked about it as recognizing that your own enlightenment is possible. But in the homework answer, it's, well, and then it says, in short, it's taking refuge in your own future direct realization of emptiness and enlightenment. So it is basically what I said. Just elongated or developed further. Result refuge. In short, taking refuge in your own future DPE and enlightenment. That was 6.
The resultant?
Who's got the homework open?
7 is...
The 7 was described result refuge.
Result refuge.
The numbering system goes crazy when I use the ACI program. So what did I just answer? Result refuge is 7?
7, yes.
Good, because I'm looking for it. Yeah, that's good. Okay. And what is 8?
We just, give the shorter definition of the greater way's wish for enlightenment.
I'm just going to have to look this up because my numbering system is messed up. All right, so the shorter definition is what the one we know of. The wish to achieve total enlightenment for the sake of others.
That's the shorter definition.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see why it indented almost 7, okay. Why it's not on here. Total, remember to include total enlightenment, as we talked about at the beginning of class. Then homework 9 is going into great detail about this. Ways of describing bodhicitta. Geshe Michael said there are 22 different references to bodhicitta in the scriptures. And he's just going over a couple of them here. He talks about the bodhicitta coming in 2 ways, first, and then 2 different ways, secondly. So there are 4 parts to this answer, and you'll get it as I go through it. So the first way of dividing the wish is into the wish in the form of an intention and the wish in the form of action. And I know you've heard this before, particularly in your Bodhisattva vow course. And what this looks like at a vow ceremony, for instance, you might remember, is that people are invited who are witnesses, to have in their minds that they too will take up the vows eventually, take action on the wish. And so that's the wish in the form of a wish, as they say. Wishing to want to be motivated enough to take on vows or actions of a bodhisattva. And I will give you the Tibetan on this one because it's often used. Munsem, M-U-N-S-E-M, that's the wish in the form of an intention, or the wish in the form of a wish. And you might remember the Moonlam festival that Jason Kappa started. That's a prayer festival. So Moonsem is moon is prayer, and Sem, I believe, has something to do with mind, or in Tibetan. And then the wish for, in terms of action, is Jiksem.
Is that a G?
J.
J.
Then they divide the wish in another way into two types. Okay, so this is totally different. All one question, but it's a totally different way of looking at it. And this time they're going to look at it from deceptive perspective and ultimate perspective. So there's bodhicitta, the way it's usually spoken of as we experience it here in deceptive reality or apparent reality. It's focused on helping objects outside of ourselves gain enlightenment. You having compassion for them, feeling like you have to help them. So they say to a regular person like us, Sosokewos, our mind is deceived into thinking we need to help these other beings, not recognizing that they are actually helping us, that they are the wish-giving jewels. You see, the Buddha, a Buddha, sees everything as blissful. Their interactions with every being produces bliss. So they don't see the beings the same way we do. And possibly it's talked about as play. All Buddhas taking on different roles to create bliss and merit. So that's called the deceptive bodhicitta, where we think there are all these beings out there that we have to help. But that's how we have to see things now. We don't have the wisdom of a Buddha to see Buddhas all around us, right? When you're a Buddha, you see Buddhas. Yeah. The second then version of this is absolute bodhicitta, or ultimate bodhicitta, which is a code word for the direct perception of emptiness. And then he said here, and I don't know, I found it a little strange, he said, well, it's not really a bodhicitta, but it's so important they call it a bodhicitta. But I'm just wondering, because they say that if you don't really truly have bodhicitta before you have the direct perception of emptiness, it comes immediately thereafter or very shortly thereafter. So why wouldn't that be another form of bodhicitta in a way? I think I can logically see how you could divide it before the direct perception of emptiness and after the direct perception of emptiness. Although they do say you can have bodhicitta before the direct perception of emptiness, but if you do, it's very likely that the direct perception of emptiness will soon follow, because it's one of the conditions, remember? A mind imbued with bodhicitta.
Know which one comes first.
Almost doesn't matter, just work
Yeah, it
towards it.
doesn't matter.
Just work towards it. So that's the end of class 3, is it?
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions about that or about last week's class? I forgot to start with an opportunity for questions. I hope that was helpful. And I hope you're able to move on. Okay, ready?
Awesome.
Class 4 is more on refuge. And I just want to review with you what they call the 5 divisions of refuge. It's not a homework question, but I think it's helpful to go over it. Yeah. So, the refuge that is sought in scope 1 on the long rim. Remember, I did pass out last week the source of all my good, and I said we're scope 1, started scope 2, and so on. So scope 1, the refuge is a good rebirth. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for whatever is going to help us have a good rebirth, protect us from a bad rebirth. In scope 2, the goal is to end suffering, and we're hoping to do that with the 3 jewels. And remember, we said you summarize the 3 jewels in just with emptiness. Understanding the emptiness of the Buddha's mind, having the direct perception of emptiness, so you really have faith in the Buddha's teaching, particularly the 4 Arya truths, which also then help you to learn to habituate some of the things. Scope 3 is where we bring in the Mahayana aspect. And so we're looking to bodhicitta, or compassion, which is going to help us to reach full Buddhahood. And they say, if you're a Mahayana practitioner, you got to do all of these. This is not, pick one. You can't just jump right up to scope 3. You have to have some belief that it's important to worry about a next life. And that it's important to understand why we're suffering. And then it's important to understand that everybody's suffering and that everything is interdependent. So that would be, the 3 refuges with their goals. And then they add in here result refuge and causal refuge.
Are those in the higher teachings? Or no?
No, just says 5 divisions of refuge, different kinds of refuge, I guess. So result is in Buddha nature, or achieving your Buddha nature, or awakening to your Buddha nature, right? Your future Buddhahood. So your refuge is that, knowing that we all supposedly will be Buddhists someday. And causal refuge is in observing and imitating, perhaps, these are my words, the realizations of others, of Aryas, or even just other practitioners, or your teacher, or what they teach, right? That kind of a thing. So these are 5 different refuges. Scope 1, good refuges, wrong. Good rebirth.
Good rebirth.
So the goal is good rebirth, and it usually leads to morality, or we maybe recognize that our protection is our morality. And now we're going to go on and talk about the end of the path, okay, which is the no more learning part, which can be talked about as nirvana, or full nirvana, or Buddhahood, or total enlightenment. So as we did kind of allude to earlier, practitioners that are at this level, 1 and 2, are looking for nirvana. They're just looking for a good future life with no suffering, basically. So the cessations. They're looking for the cessations, the end of the mental afflictions and their causes. Because we know, if you believe in cause and effect, which these people do, that the only way you're going to end your suffering is by ending the cause of suffering. So ending the mental afflictions. And the seeds for them, as they say. The proclivities, the things that you've habituated in past lives. But then in scope 3, you go beyond that and you try to gain omniscience and the capacity for emanation. The 4 bodies of a Buddha, in other words. We went over that last week, right? Yeah. Homework 1. Give the definition of nirvana. Anybody? You heard it before, I know, many times. And I think I've even said it already.
Permanent sensation. Permanent cessation. Permanent cessation.
Of what?
Of omniscience, no.
Cyclic existence. Suffering.
How do you...
Of ending mental afflictions.
And... I just said it.
And suffering.
To end nirvana is the end of suffering because you stop permanently all your mental afflictions.
I just wrote it.
And the causes of your mental afflictions. Yeah. Got it now?
It is written right here.
But they add in the answer, they say, instead of the causes, they say in their entirety. And then they say, due to one's individual analysis. We all know what that is, right?
Your karma.
Nope.
Meditation.
So that's question number 2. What does individual analysis mean? And by the way, let's just, not that it's a homework question, but because the term's used, What is a mental affliction?
It's a propensity to see things deceptively.
Yeah, that's good. That's not the pat answer, though. There's a pat answer. But it's the cause of what you just said. No, it's the result of what you just said. That's what it is. The effect of what you just said. They say anything that disturbs your peace of mind is a mental affliction. But what you said is better in a way because it gives you the cause. Yeah. Putting them together makes a perfect definition, I think. Individual analysis here refers to a person's realization of the various details of the four truths after the direct perception of emptiness, which we've actually already talked about before. That what happens after the direct perception of emptiness is you have an unshaken belief in the Buddha's teachings about the four truths. And in this answer they call it the four realized truths. That's how they phrase that unshaken belief, realized. So you've had a direct perception of the truth of the four Arya truths or noble truths or worthy truths, as Lama is now calling them. And yes, it's not wrong to say meditation, because when does this all occur? It occurs in meditation. So I'm just going to do a little aside here again. We just went over mental afflictions, and Craig added to sort of the cause of them is seeing things incorrectly. And because we see things incorrectly, we do negative things, which creates what we call, negative effects or karmic seeds. Probably, this was developed in India, which was very much an agrarian society at the time, so seed was a good metaphor to use. But what it really is, maybe the metaphor for us to use, is it's one of the frames in the movie of our life, or something like that. If we have this mental continuum, which I think of as a movie in a way, because it's ongoing, it's frame after frame after frame, that there, every time we say, think, or do something, we create a frame that gets stored in our minds as part of the movie of our life that comes back to us again and again. There's a cyclic aspect to even this life, right? Not just we take one birth after another, but even in this life, things come back at us.
History repeats.
Yep. So to reach nirvana, we have to change what we're putting into our mental continuum. Because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Right? Mm-hmm. So a change has to happen. And the change will be through planting different karmic seeds, making different impressions in your mind, taking different pictures, right? Which are your memories, in a way. I think of them as memories. Because they affect who you think you are and how you think your world is functioning. And so every perception you have is sort of a replay of some frame that was part of the movie of your life, or a collection of frames. And so nirvana means that you're going to stop, you have to stop planting any frames that are negative or seeds that are negative. And it's that direct perception of emptiness that shows you how to do that, gives you the insight. And the motivation to not create any more negative ones and to perform constant virtue. That's what you're going to need to do. You've got to get the accumulation by planting constant virtue, positive frames in your mind. And the way you do this with or without the direct perception of emptiness is to work hard to perceive how things are really working in this world. And I think the summation of that, the easiest way to remember it is that you are the creator of your world. And stop thinking that it's somebody else's problem or fault. That everything comes from you. The more you can do that, the more you get the truth of emptiness, right? That it's really an empty slate out there, and you are writing on it. Or screen, and you are creating the movie. So you can change the script, and you can put Angelina Jolie and whatever his name is into your movie. Become best buddies with them, or some other wonderful people. Maybe even more wonderful than them, although they're pretty swell, I think, right?
I don't know about Brad Pitt, but
Well, the adoption and all.
she is, they're married, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, well, not exactly. I don't know. I don't pay attention, but
That's why I did.
I think it's a rocky road even for people who have good intentions. All right, so the next question, I think, could use a little previewing. And so I'm going to use the board again just to review something that hopefully you remember. But we'll see. This is a review class after all. Hopefully most of this is familiar.
What question is this that we're on?
Oh, sorry, we're not there yet.
Just.
I'm getting ready for a question.
What, did we just do three?
3.
We just did 3, or we're on?
No, we're
I
going
just
to
did
3.
2.
Okay, getting ready for 3.
Okey-dokey.
All right, I'm just going to read 3. I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to give you some background for it. So 3 says, describe the difference in this school's view of nirvana with something left over and nirvana with nothing left over. This school being the Madhyamika Svatantrika, or the lower middle way school. So we already went over the schools, right? This is the one that believes things exist based on their parts. And the way Lama Ru talks about it is this is the 50-50 school. Things can't exist unless you perceive them, and you can't perceive them unless there's a basis for imputation. That's the lower middle way school. It's not necessarily by projection. That's the higher middle way.
Oh, that's right. This is,
Lower middle way is
this is a basis, yes.
it's still up to you, because you are causing how you perceive the parts.
Mhm.
But there's some sort of parts out there on which you direct your perception. That's the lower middle way. And truthfully, how do you live your life? As if you are projecting everything, or more like that maybe you have some effect on how you see things, right? So,
At least, I hope at least that.
yeah. So I think it's a good goal to find yourself in the lower middle way school in your life, At least it is for me. So we're talking now about how maybe we live our life. Okay, so lower middle way's presentation of nirvana with something left over and nirvana with nothing left over. And so, not surprisingly, in this definition we're going to be talking about parts. And the nirvana is about you, your nirvana, and your parts. So let's go over how this school saw your parts. Parts of a person. Does anybody remember any of the parts according to the school? We go from the gross to the subtle. Form would be the most gross. We see ourselves as having body and mind, right? So we're going to be putting down here things that relate to body and mind. So form is something physical, relates to our body. Mm-hmm. The others are all mental. Is that a good clue? Mm-hmm. The least subtle mental experience, or whatever.
Is that sensation?
Yeah, feelings. Yeah, sensation is a good word for it, but I'm going to use feelings because that's what they use in the materials. Feelings. And I think of it as feelings as almost form because it has an effect on the form, doesn't it? If we're happy, we get a rush of, what is that? Serotonin? No. Endorphins, or there's another.
There's serotonin, isn't it? No, serotonin is tanning.
What?
I don't know. Well, I don't think it's serotonin.
Is that the sleeping one?
Yeah.
There's another one that's a tonin, but it's not serotonin. There's some other thing that gets released that either creates the good feeling or...
Endorphins, I guess.
Well, endorphins are one of them, but there's something else too. But anyway. So, and then the more subtle that they choose to spell out is a part. Do you remember what that is?
No.
Discrimination. How do we get these feelings? It's because we discriminate between things. We like some things, we dislike some things. Mm-hmm. Right? Pleasing, not pleasing. Discrimination creates.
The reason I said sensations is because I think of it as the input that's coming in through our
emotions.
Well, not emotions, but the sensations that we receive through our eyes, ears.
Do we receive them?
I mean, we don't have a form either, but we're putting it in.
They say, remember, this goes back to the whole idea of interdependence again. You know, there are those three things, I'm getting way off topic, but that there's the object, mm-hmm. There's the, let's use sight. So there's the object that you see, there's the seeing of it.
This is three spheres.
Yeah, and then there's the consciousness of it. Mm-hmm. Okay? So if everything is coming from us, this would be the higher middle way, mm-hmm. Then it's not so much that we are bringing it in through our senses. Even in the lower middle way, we may be, it's a full interaction, is all I'm saying. It's mm-hmm. Total interdependence.
Yes.
Okay, so that the object is as much being created as it is being perceived. And I think in any of the middle way schools, if you get the three spheres concept. Anyway. So the discrimination, is it of something that exists out there, or is it of something, and it's, this is all this stuff we have to play with and explore, I think. So besides this, then they say there are all the other mental factors. And as they do, these Tibetan Buddhists, they count things. They say there are 46 different mental factors in total. So there are 2 here and there are 44 more here.
Is that the 5th one, all the other factors?
I've seen it written as the 4th, but in this class they write it as the 5th, so I'm not sure about that. Anyway, and then this, what's the last one then?
I thought that was all other.
Mental, no, yeah, mental.
In this course, they call it main mind,
Is that
which is
consciousness?
your consciousness or awareness, which includes your sense faculty,
But wouldn't that
your
be the
sense
same-
recognition.
But wouldn't that be the same as feelings?
Oh no.
Senses? Like pleasure and pain?
Feelings maybe are the result
Of,
of the mind's recognition or projection or whatever. This is the mind now.
Does it come from start here?
Most
or down,
subtle,
or
I
does
know
does
it, I
go up,
know.
you
Well, that's the question, isn't
Yeah.
it? Depends upon which school you're in. So, these are the consciousnesses, which include 6.
so the main mind is,
Sorry, it's kind of
6
messy.
consciousnesses.
what
Mm-hmm.
are the 6 conscious?
The eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, the nose consciousness, the taste consciousness, and the touch consciousness.
Okay.
So, object, interaction, awareness, or awareness, creation, object. 3 interdependent parts. So that's one of the parts. Not sure, then, you know, as you brought up, you said, isn't this feelings? Let's think about that. They list it as a separate part of you, the feelings. It's almost like causes and effects, or causes and effects.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was saying. Which way do you,
Ah,
where do you
yeah.
start?
Depends on the school, I think. Can you see that says main mind? I don't know.
Mhm.
Yep. Not writing, so.
Round corners.
Yeah. So, in this school, remember we're independent school now, the lower middle way school. Something left over, also called with remainder, means that you have achieved nirvana. So this is nirvana with something left over, okay? Means that you have the cessation of your mental afflictions and the causes, but you still have a body. That something left over is the form that was produced by your impure karma. So you can stop all your suffering and still have a body, and still have things happen that happen to a body. You could still get cancer. You could still
But you're not
tear
creating,
your, what did I tear? Meniscus.
but you're not creating any more bad karma.
No, and you're not necessarily seeing it, this event, as a bad thing,
Suffering.
It's
as
just,
suffering. It may be pain, but it's not suffering, because you can see what the value of it is,
Mhm.
the lesson in it. One lesson is, oh my God, this is what it's like when somebody has a knee replacement. A bit. So you better be more sympathetic to people who have hip and knee replacements, for instance. Talking to myself here. And other things. Or this is what's ahead for you, so think about how to live with this now, because there'll be more coming. You know,
Mhm.
all good lessons. Then there's nirvana with nothing left over, which means you no longer produce what we think of as a physical body. You no longer see yourself as having this physical body. You don't have any more negative seeds to work off, perhaps. And you see that you have a light body of an angel or a Buddha. It's all about how you see your body. The body you have now could be a light body, if you saw it that way. But if you're still working off negative karma, you're not going to be able to see it as an angel's body, probably. That was 3. Question 4. There is a kind of nirvana called nirvana which does not stay. And what is the meaning of this phrase? This is a little quirky, so get ready. This is the nirvana that a Buddha achieves versus someone who's just going for the lower nirvana, okay? So, in this context, does not stay describes the nirvana of a totally enlightened being who stays neither in the extreme of cyclic life, where we live now, nor in the extreme of peace, which is where you put your feet up, that we talked about earlier, the nirvana of the lower way.
So that would be a Theravada then?
Yeah, the lower nirvana. So this Buddha, this is what we were talking about earlier. This person doesn't stay in peace with the feet up by choice.
Mhm.
Once you reach nirvana, you end all your suffering. You can stay right there, sort of. Then they say that
The Buddha's coming back.
the Buddhists come and talk you into
See what you're
being,
missing.
coming back into a deceptive reality to help others, but you don't, remember, you see it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You see why you're there, you see how to help people
You understand.
come out of their suffering. So that's what it means, nirvana, which does not stay. You
Because you're
don't,
going back to it.
Mhm.
You're going back to the whole.
yeah, but to help.
Mm.
But you see it totally differently, yeah.
Makes sense.
I mean, it sounds like it's a negative, like it's
Yeah.
wavering or something. It's not meant that.
It's the middle way all over again.
It is in a way, isn't it? And just to go over what the middle way means again, because we throw this term out and then it's not defined here. The middle way is understanding that things exist, they function in this world and in this Buddhist world we're talking about here. There are things that appear to be based on causes and parts and projections, right? But they don't exist the way we think they do. They're not coming, we're not perceiving them, we are projecting them in the highest school. And even in the lower middle way, we have responsibility for them. They can't come into existence without our participation. Describe the 3 main parts of the method for achieving nirvana. This takes into account what are called the 3 extraordinary trainings, which are really the path for scope 2 and 1 for that matter. Does anybody remember what the 3 extraordinary trainings are? Yeah, it's a good guess, but I didn't put them on there. Because I didn't go over it in class 1, but maybe you want to add them in. They're in there, they're embedded in there actually. They are in there. Now that I think about it. The first, it says, so the 3 main parts of the method for achieving nirvana. First, you have to master 2 of the extraordinary trainings, morality and meditative concentration. I don't know why they chose to parse it out this way instead of going 1, 2, 3. They put those 2 together. And the second main part is the master of the extraordinary training of wisdom. And then the third is to become extremely familiar with the realizations of emptiness. So it's like 2 of the extraordinary trainings, the third of extraordinary training, and then the path of habituation would be another way to explain it. A, master the first 2 of the extraordinary trainings, morality and meditative concentration. Actually, that's not the way it's written in the answer key. I switched them around. B, become a master of extraordinary training of wisdom. And C, become extremely familiar with the realizations of emptiness, which you have had on the path of seeing. That's habituation to me.
Yeah.
It's just an
It's
odd
not-
grouping, I know,
yeah.
compared to,
I
but
mean, usually the 3 extraordinary trainings are morality, concentration, and wisdom. aren't they?
yeah, but remember, if you follow the 5 paths, it's great if you get the wisdom, if you have the direct perception, but you're not done.
No.
That's what this says. How do you achieve nirvana? You can't get to a nirvana without the habituation piece.
Oh, 3 main parts. Oh, this is,
Yeah.
I see.
It's just another way of listing it, right?
Mhm. I didn't read the question. I thought
Oh, sorry.
it was my fault, of course.
That's a good mantra. Oh, it's my fault, of course. Ahum. That is truly, that would be a good mantra to practice, no matter what comes up. Say after me, Om.
Oh,
It's my
it's
fault.
my fault.
Of course.
Of course.
Ahum.
I had a real training in that this whole week.
Well, that must be why it's happened. You're the one who gave us the mantra. Should have let you do it. So at this point, this is very interesting. You should listen to this from the ACI audios, because Geshe Michael isn't teaching it. John Stillwell is. I assume it's John Stillwell. They refer to him as John. Remember, John Stillwell is the person who did all the notes. He's really a delight to listen to,
Yes,
and
he
he is so clear.
So the
His
first part was
explanation.
not, then the first, number 3 was Geshe
Geshe
Michael.
Michael. He was in India at the time of this and wanted it to continue, and so he got John Stillwell to teach it.
Oh, wow.
You know, sneaky, just like some lamas are when they're trying to get their students to take the podium,
Go figure.
to practice
Go
being a
figure.
Buddha. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that in. So at this point, he decides it's about time to talk about emptiness, since we've been mentioning it all along and haven't really spent a lot of time talking about it. And so I think he brought up some good things, and then I have some things of my own that have been very meaningful for me as I've tried to understand it over the years. So first of all, emptiness is a negative. It's an absence. Doesn't mean emptiness isn't something, right? It's not nothing either. It's somewhere, it's a middle way between something and nothing. It's an absence of something, okay? But it's not nothing. Very hard to appreciate. So one of the things that really helped me think about it was this idea of emptiness is like empty space. Like, it's probably always easier to think of the physical because
That's
it's more
where-
concrete. Yeah.
That's where we are right now.
So somebody, I think it was probably, I'm not sure if it was Jesse, said emptiness is like an empty parking space. So an empty parking space is emptiness in empty space. Not necessarily seeing the concrete but seeing that the car isn't in that space. But that space that would have held the car, that's empty space. A definitive empty space, right? So empty space is the potential to hold something. It's availability, right? So you could think of emptiness as availability to hold a thought. Because last week we were talking about what happens when you have no thoughts. Then you're experiencing emptiness in a way. Although Ruth started saying, yeah, but you're breathing. So I said, what's going on when you're not thinking? She's breathing. So that's kind of important to think about. Breathing is very important to think about as we study it in yoga and in some of our meditations, right? Like when
Yeah,
the one that I'm not
into that
necessarily talking about in the Sutra course.
That's right, I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, but very interesting. I'm still working on that actually in my own mind because, you know, we say it's an automatic reflex. So is there conceptualization behind it? And they say yes.
You know, you're just protecting the self that you think you are when you breathe.
Exactly. They say we don't really need to breathe. It's part of our identity that we're constructing.
It was reading Reggie Ray's book, Secret of Vajra World. At the very end is a little story about, I can't remember his name. Do you remember his name?
His Lama. No.
I don't think it is
not
his
the
name.
dying of his Lama?
Was it? I don't think it was. Was it his Lama?
I think so. Oh.
No, it was there was a doctor in it who was the
Yeah, I
Lama's.
think it was Chogyam. It was Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's death, no?
No, it wasn't.
Somebody else's death.
Somebody else's death. But just he was near death, or they thought he was dead 2 or 3 times. He was just sitting up in bed.
It was very powerful to read.
Yeah.
Very great book to help.
Yeah, there's some parts of that are just the nothingness of it all.
And the potential of emptiness.
Well, yeah.
And how some people can use it.
It just, there's a certain part of it that sounds very, he even says so, it sounds bland, it sounds gray, it sounds empty, which is kind of scary. Because it just, he's talking about the one taste of it all, and everything has the same taste, and the way we look at it, it sounds very boring. The way the ego looks at it.
Yes, well that often makes me wonder when they say we get to nirvana, or we get to this blissful state, then we come out of it purposefully. And maybe because a little bit of that, we want the action. We want to see what can evolve. I mean, that's me looking at it from my deceptive reality, perhaps, but I'm trying to figure out why wouldn't you want to leave your feet up, really? You know? I mean, maybe it's altruism, but maybe it's a little of that too. You know? How are you going to get the bliss fix, really? Unless you
have the action.
Yeah, of help, and if it's not helping others, is it a...
It's not bliss producing then.
Right, possibly.
It's got to be a continuum of some sort.
So interesting to put all this together. I'm getting pretty far afield.
Yep,
Okay.
sorry.
But good. So, one of the things in the next question that this is all leading up to is you can't appreciate empty space unless you saw it as a space holding something. In a way, you can't understand something's a parking space, what a parking space is, until you see something being parked in it. Okay? This is going to the gotcha, in case you're wondering. But it's such a hard concept that I think starting with a physical representation might be more easy. So you can't really understand it without seeing how it can function. So you can't really understand emptiness without seeing how it can function. So using empty space as the metaphor for emptiness. So emptiness, then, is like a blank screen or slate, which we understand by seeing something in that. We see its function by putting something in it. And how about this metaphor from a math teacher? It's like a variable in algebra. It has no function or value until you put something in it. I thought that was really cool, because then I thought, oh, and then we have these Tibetan symbols after we come out of the direct, or whatever, you know what I'm saying, out of the direct perception of emptiness. There are Sanskrit syllables that appear that then take on characteristics and qualities.
I wonder about those syllables.
And what about algebra then? Why do we learn algebra? How else have we used it in our lives? Not so much, but it works perfectly with this metaphor, I think.
Every once in a while I use it.
I would think you would. I do once in a while too, but not so often these days. So emptiness is a negative state, not having any qualities. So, except the potential to have qualities. Okay. And I think of it as having the potential for creation and change. You know, like a variable. You create the variable and then you put different things into it. Our usual perception is to think objects exist from their own side inherently, that our sense apparatus apprehends, like we were just talking about, rather than things existing dependent on causes, parts, or projection. So those are our three different schools, right? Without first examining things as self-existent, our belief that things are self-existent, we can't prove that they're not really independently self-existent. So we have to, this part of our study is to really look at how we're perceiving our world. We do see them as self-existent. And that's the term gotcha in Tibetan. Things that we think are out there are referred to as the things we're trying to deny in our Buddhist study. We're trying to prove to ourselves that they don't exist out there, that rather they exist only interdependently with our mind. Now this is the Mahayana level, remember? Because at the lower level, the word lower isn't meant in a pejorative term, it's meant in a maybe a limited fashion, which also sounds pejorative. Because they're not concerned with things. They're concerned with only the self as a thing, of course, but not the world around them. So, really important to answer this next question is to say that we have to agree that we see things as self-existent, else we can't explore the fact that they're not self-existent. They say it's like saying there's no horse in this room. If you didn't know what a horse looked like, you wouldn't be able to know that there wasn't a horse in this room. So one of the ways we do this work about seeing things as self-existent is we try to figure out where things come from. We explore this idea that they're made up of parts, for instance. So So we take an object, like this table, which sure looks to me like it's outside of my mind. And it sure looks to me like it's got different parts. It's got a top, it's got legs, it's got sides, it's got plastic, it's got metal, it's got screws, it's got rubbery things on the bottom. And within the whole top, there are all these little pixels, if you want. And pixels have subpixels, as we found out over the years with computers. On the same size screen, you get more and more pixels. Where did they come from? Proof that every part can be broken into smaller parts in our very own computer. So it's like a disappearance of any existing thing. As you explore smaller and smaller parts, things just start to vanish, don't they? And as you go into the smaller parts, you lose the perception of the whole. You know, as I was talking about the pixels in the top of the table, you weren't thinking about the legs anymore or the other parts. So where do things really reside? We can only think about one thing at a time. So in that one moment, the only thing that was existing for us was pixels in the tabletop, not the rest of it. So, as we talked about last week, now our scientists say, oh yeah, there is something self-existent, smallest part. It's called a God particle, a boson. Boson?
Yeah, that's got another name.
Boson. Anyway.
Forgot the other part. The other part.
Yeah. So it seems a fruitless effort to keep looking for the smallest part because there doesn't appear to be one. Because there isn't one. That's one of the proofs of emptiness.
There isn't one yet because they haven't imagined it yet.
Well, that's how I feel about it. But if you really believe that, then you're working at the highest middle way school, right? The smallest part has to come from your projection. And if you haven't projected it yet, it can't exist. All right. So one of the things I like to bring up at this point is the idea of that koan. If a tree falls in a forest and no one's there to hear it, does it still make a sound? Now, based on even the lower middle way school, what's the answer?
No.
No, because for the sound to exist, it has to be heard. How would you know that there was a sound? That there could exist a sound if you didn't hear it? How could you believe it? Remember, the highest level of knowing is your direct perception. You could try to use logic to explain it, but would you really, really know? How are you going to prove that?
That it makes a sound?
Yeah. Well, somebody'd say you place a tape recording and, a tape recorder maybe. But then you'd be hearing a recording. You wouldn't necessarily. It would be a good logical proof, probably, because recordings capture real sounds. But you wouldn't have proof that the sound you heard was the tree falling.
Or that actual tree.
Or that, yeah, or whatever, I mean, it would be close, but nothing like the actual perception of it. So in Tibetan, they have a term for a thing which you believe exists from its own side, not dependent on your participation. It's called gacha. G-A-K-J-A, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of these things took me forever to get. You guys are just so sharp, you get them right away.
Oh, yeah.
Now, how many times have we heard that? Gotcha.
The thing we deny, I mean,
Yeah.
that just didn't mean a whole lot to me, I'm sorry. Now I get it, but it took a while. So gotcha. This is called the thing we deny. Which is what? What is it we're trying to deny or prove? Doesn't exist.
Non-existing things.
A self-existent thing.
Yeah. So, that doesn't mean a whole lot either. What does that mean?
That
Doesn't exist.
it exists by itself because of itself. It has a
Inherent
inherent.
is a good word we use.
Yeah.
But I think even better is independent of anything else. Mhm. That's the sound of a tree falling without anybody hearing it. See, sometimes they say emptiness is a negative thing. It isn't a thing, it's negative. It's not even, I can't even call it a thing. I shouldn't be calling it a thing. It's,
Yeah.
it's hard to explain. But if you want to explain it on its flip side of the coin, on the positive aspect, you talk about it as interdependence. That's what they say. Things only exist interdependently because they are empty of inherent self-nature. Okay, so the gotcha is believing that anything could exist independently of its causes and condition, parts, or projections based on your school. And why is this helpful? How does this help us to think like this? Because why are we bothering? Why don't we just go out and knock down a few beers and watch the game?
Watch the trees fall.
Or go to the play that I went to last night and the power went out. Sorry, little aside. We're sitting in the theater and the power went out.
What the?
All East Gloucester was out of power
Oh.
for some time. No idea why. And no idea what karma created it. Anyway, so why is this helpful?
Well, it helps us.
To see.
It helps us to see the interdependence of beings.
And how is that helpful?
To realize the emptiness around you.
And why is that helpful? I mean, why are we doing this? Seriously, why are we doing this? You didn't have anything better to do this afternoon?
Well, it helps us.
Become an enlightened being and help all people, all living beings.
And how can that happen?
Studying in wisdom.
If everything is interdependent, especially with us,
Well, if everything is independent,
interdependent,
interdependent, yeah. And if I see someone that's unhappy, then I couldn't possibly be totally happy in my own life, because I'm seeing something out there that's unhappy. It's not out there, it's coming from me.
and you could change it.
And it's changeable, yeah, that's the key, yeah.
Yeah, that's the key.
Can change.
If it's interdependent with me in some way,
And it's empty of being anything self-existent, that it's not self-existently unhappy.
yeah, then there's a chance that I could cause a change. That's the value of all this. Really, really believing it means I can see my world totally differently than I am now. And, with a little imagination, that sounds pretty darn good. Or cataclysmic, depending on which way you take the change. Important to think both ways. When you have a negative emotion and you believe it is caused outside yourself, then it means the change of it is dependent on external things. And you could be powerless.
It's all random.
If you can at least try to believe in the theory that you have some participation in its existence, then you could maybe affect change. All of this to get to homework 6. Now it's going to seem really apparent, the answer, hopefully. Why is it important to identify the object that we deny? Remember what that is?
It's a self-existent,
The
independent.
thing we deny, a self-existing thing that has inherent nature, that's independent of anything else. First of all, and so they start with saying, if we don't explore what a self-existent object would look like the horse in the room, if it did exist the way we deceptively think, then we can never come to realize the idea of emptiness. So it's like empty space being the place where a car was parked. Without envisioning or seeing, or envisioning really, a car in a space, you can't envision the space that held that car. Right? So without thinking of an object out there, outside yourself, it's hard to think about the emptiness that allowed you to envision that thing outside yourself. Since it consists of the absence of this non-existent thing, this self-existent object is known as the object that we deny. So be sure to look this over and then rewrite it in your own words so that you see if you get this. Because the language of the answer isn't as important as your understanding, right? And even the word gotcha isn't that important. It's the concept. And then the application of it, obviously, in worldly experiences. We're going to end early today. We're going to do one more question and that's it for today.
I was just getting into it.
Yeah.
What?
I was just getting into it.
Really? I didn't anticipate that, unfortunately. Well, the part I'm leaving out is the whole Buddhist logic proof of the one and the many and going through the tautologies and things like that. And I thought there was enough heady stuff that it was better to start the next class with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I envisioned a glazed look coming up into 3 hours of teaching. So. And this next one could be a little obscure too, but I think I've got it. I think I've nailed it. Okay? We'll see. This one was like, what are you talking about for me at first? But you probably already get this. This is Buddhist, you just hear from me.
This is 7.
This is the lead up to 7. I think the review courses are just to be sure that these things that you heard previously make a lot of sense to you now. And if this one does, you're doing really well. John Stilwell says, don't worry too much about this one. But I think you should. Because it's about the path, you know? It's a way of, you know, again, a metaphor for the path. Is this looking like something you remember?
Mhm.
So I'm starting with the definition of terms as a good algebra teacher, and then I'll give you the equation. Sorry, at the end of the board, my writing gets pretty bad. All right.
I do remember this one.
So let me tell you a story. And I want you to just listen. There are going to be 3 characters in the story. Well, more than 3, but 3 different types of characters in the story, okay? And there's one who's missing in this list of different types of people that can exist. And we'll talk about that at the end. It's not in the teaching, but I thought it made sense to go because there really are 4 different kinds of being in this idea of the path. Okay? So here's the story. As soon as Craig's done taking notes, I'm going to tell you the story. And you're welcome to close your eyes if you want or whatever. And just think about it. Okay? And just be sure you get the variables. I'm going to read those first. So in this story, there are some spectators. And they represent people who have not had the direct perception of emptiness. So they don't really have any wisdom about how things exist from a Buddhist perspective. And so they live in a deceptive world and they can be deceived. Then there's a magician who's going to put on a show and can do it because people can be deceived if they haven't really thought about how reality is. And that's how magicians work. They deceive your sensibilities. Right? In this story, the magician is someone who himself has had the direct perception of emptiness, but can still be deceived when he's not in the direct perception of emptiness. He comes back into what we call deceptive reality after the direct perception of emptiness and hasn't yet habituated all the aspects of the truth of the 4 Arya truths. And then there are some people who come along at the end of the magic trick, and they're called the latecomers. And they don't see the magic trick. They're not deceived at all. And I'm just wondering where the Buddha is in this whole story. So maybe you can help me out when we get to the end. So here's the story. There was a magician in ancient India, and Lama Root says that this goes on today. And you can imagine this, because it went on in our country too in the old days. You know, there weren't, especially in the Wild West, there weren't theaters or anything, or whatever. People would just stroll into town and put on a show, and everybody loved it because, all they did was work all day and there wasn't a lot going on. So, how the circus would come to town and all those things that even in our childhood happened, right? So there's this magician, and, people have had a great belief in their ability, as children do, and we are children until we have the direct perception of emptiness. And so this magician throws a stick on the ground and then says an incantation over it, like bibbidi bobbidi boo or something, and sprinkles some special powder on it. And the spectators see the horse right there in the room. They see a horse and they don't see a stick. So they've been deceived because they have this expectation that a magician can do things like this, right? This belief that things exist out there and that the horse idea isn't coming from their own mind. So they're deceived. The magician sees the horse too, and believes there's one there, or sees the horse, but doesn't believe it, because that magician has had the direct perception of emptiness. He can't help but see the horse, because he's still living somewhat in the deceptive world. He's not in the direct perception of emptiness now. He hasn't acquired that ability to see things ultimately and deceptively at the same time. So right now he's seeing it deceptively, he's seeing the horse. The latecomer neither sees a horse nor believes that there's one there. The spectators are like a person who has not yet seen emptiness directly, since they see things as self-existent and also believe that they are. They believe nothing to do with their mind. It's out there. The magician created a horse. The magician is like a bodhisattva, and I don't know why they say like a bodhisattva here. That's just coming from me. Who has seen emptiness directly, but who is not now in the direct perception of emptiness. Things still appear to them to be self-existent, but they don't believe what they see. The latecomers are people who are not yet a Buddha, but who are in the direct perception of emptiness at the time, and recognize that things neither appear as self-existent, and nor are they believing that they could be self-existent. So they're not seeing the horse. They just see the stick. Metaphor for different places along the path. Each one is more advanced than the last, I would say, right? This is maybe only one DPE. This person has probably had multiples. Where's the Buddha? What would the Buddha see?
Both.
That's what they say. Stick and horse.
As same as the magician, then, correct? Because the magician sees it as one, but
Sees the horse.
He sees the horse, but realizes that it's not there.
Yeah, he doesn't believe it.
He can't help himself. He sees the horse.
But he
does not help himself.
But he doesn't believe it.
He doesn't believe that it's a horse.
But the Buddha sees it and doesn't believe it either, does he?
But he sees the stick, and he can see what we're seeing, or this deceptive reality. They're talking about ultimate and deceptive reality.
The stick doesn't exist either.
Well, yeah.
But doesn't the magician see the same thing as the Buddha?
The magician sees the horse only.
Oh, no stick.
No stick.
Okay. No stick. Buddha sees stick and horse.
So a person in the DPE can see things like a Buddha, apparently. I guess that's what I have to interpret. Latecomer is not a Buddha, but who is in the direct perception of emptiness. Things neither appear as self-existent to them, nor are they believing them at that time to be self-existent. They don't see the horse, as I remember the story.
The latecomers?
They only see the stick.
Okay.
That's how they tell it.
Is that in the reading?
And the Buddha sees both things.
Was that
At the very same time.
Could have left in his right brain working.
But both. The stick
both
and the
working,
horse,
yeah.
boom, at the same time. The only one who sees both the stick and the horse at the same time, apparently. The person in the DPE can't see the horse, can't be deceived. The Buddha can see the horse, but isn't deceived by the horse or something. Anyway, I thought that was a good place to end.
Yeah.
Think about it. This is a good one. There's a lot in here. And then get ready for logic next week. See how I do. I'm remembering teaching it in Dharma Essentials 2 and ACI 2. This will be my third shot at it. Let's see how I can do. It takes quite a while to teach. I'm sorry, to teach this particular. It takes me quite a while to feel satisfied in the way I teach the logic. You got to think about it. Good. When we come back next week, as part of the review, maybe you can take us through this.
Oh, please.
Please.
Is deceived but doesn't believe it. Is deceived, had the DP, is deceived but does not believe it. Does not. The magician.
The magician is
Does
directly
not believe
experienced
it's a horse. He sees the
emptiness.
horse.
But what he sees after he comes out of empty,
But
after the
does not
director,
believe it. He sees
Yes.
the horse.
it's
But he knows it's a trick. He knows it's an illusion. But he still can only see the horse.
what we see in this world of deceptive reality is the horse. What he went into and had the experience of the direct
And understood it.
and understood that if while he was in the direct experience, he would not be seeing a horse, he would be seeing a stick. But when he still hasn't worked out all his everything that he needs to do to work out his mental afflictions.
You know, they say, like, people who have near-death experiences, like
Yeah.
Joe Bulky Taylor, when they come back, it's very hard to live in this world again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably true of the direct perception of emptiness too.
think so.
Like the magician.
Right.
He doesn't want to see the horse. He doesn't want to see it because he knows it's not real.
Right.
He doesn't want to live in this
And how do
illusory
you, and how,
world.
right, and how do you go about your life then? Looking around going, is that why some people might be crazy, but they're not crazy?
You gotta wonder.
Is that
No.
soft?
No, that's a good question. I wonder about that all the time.
Do you know-
Schizophrenic people, I wonder if they're ahead of us. frankly.
Some of the students, you look at some of the students and what they're saying, and some of the situations, and you think, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? Or what are they saying that I can't even?
Maybe they're people caught between two worlds.
Yeah.
Schizophrenics, eh?
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what's real.
Well,
No.
And nor do we, that's the point.
What did Ruth say? Ruth said she's had more wisdom from some of her schizophrenic patients than anybody.
Because they're mucking around with this stuff. And seemingly not by choice. But,
No, it's just, it's there.
But maybe they are Buddhists trying to teach.
Well, yeah.
Or maybe they're just on the path. Maybe that's what habituation looks like. Don't know.
Schizophrenics are the ones that hear voices in their head, is that correct?
Like,
Like most of the mass murderers that we set
well,
out on the
those are
street.
psychopaths.
No, psychopaths something different. Schizophrenics hear voices in their head, and they
Well,
hear
yeah.
and they hear.
Well,
voices.
yeah, okay, but,
I
yeah.
don't think they're all.
Well, they don't all go out.
No, they don't.
No, they don't all, but you wouldn't believe how many of them
But
might just
psychopaths have no morality.
no morality. No.
And they can be
But the
murderers.
schizophrenics that actually go out and commit these kinds of crimes
Are
or
confused.
believe that the voices in their heads are telling them to protect themselves.
Right, well. So, anyway, a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm.
The important thing is to recognize that this whole world around us is like a magic trick, or the movie. It's all an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
It's, but it functions as solid and real because it creates all of our opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
to gain merit, to work off past
continue on.
karma, etc., to learn how to function like a Buddha. Cool, huh?
Very cool.
And we thought it was something else. On that note, let's offer and dedicate again, if you don't mind. And if somebody else would like to bring in the prayers that they may have written, feel free. We'd be glad to say them with you. So if you would just perhaps close your eyes if you don't have to. But, you know, we've worked hard at understanding these ideas. They're challenging. They certainly are different than we were brought up to believe. So take a minute to just focus on the breath that
Doesn't exist.
maybe doesn't exist, doesn't need to exist, that it does exist. The breath does exist, it functions for us. The question is, is it an illusion or not? So I just ruined the piece that I was hoping to bring to you. But find some way to quiet the mind, quiet the body. We offer the work we did here today to those from the past, particularly Geshe Michael and Lama Marut and John Stillwell, and those in the present who guide us toward an understanding of how this world really is working and of our own true potential. By this deed, may every living being experience a pure world. May our work here today empower us to be of help to others with our body, speech, and mind, remembering always the interdependent connections between us. Sarva Mangalam. May all beings be happy.
Please
Please
teach.
teach, please teach, please teach.
Stay.
Please stay, please stay, please stay.
Just wanted to record the whole thing, I think, because it's 3 hours and 1 minute and 9 seconds. Both of